be with you guys. Again, my name is Maurice Davis, and I am the minister for the Bedford Street Church of Christ in Abington, Massachusetts. We used to be the Church of Christ in Milton. Since January of this year, we were able to, last year we purchased a property in Abington, Massachusetts, and we have been worshiping there since January of this year. God has been good to us as a congregation, and we're so very thankful for his blessings upon us. Amen. So Wilson asked me to deal with encouraging us to understand the work of leaders, to help motivate us to be leaders. And so we're going to try and do that with this morning's presentation. What I want to do is maybe for about 30 minutes or so, deal with the presentation, and then if there are questions that you guys may have, then we'll deal with those. And then Wilson said we're going to take a break, and then go back and get some coffee and some juice, whatever's downstairs. And then when we come back from that break, then Brother Mike will then give us a presentation also. So godly men in the home, church, and community. I think we recognize, we all agree that we need more godly men. Amen. In our congregations, definitely in our homes, and in the community organization that we're part of. Now, that does not happen simply because we wish it. There's some training that needs to go on. There's some awareness that needs to go on. And one of the ways that we help bring about that awareness through gatherings like this, that we are reminded of what God wants us to be. And as I mentioned to Wilson when we first got here, and he told me the number of brothers that are going to be here, I told him this is good for a men's gathering. You know, when you have a sisters gathering, you get 100 of them with just an invitation. But when it comes to brothers, we don't always prioritize the spirit. Now, you're going to see us on Sunday when it's time for Lord of worship. But what about all the other things that go on where a male presence is needed? And one of the things we need to recognize is if we don't do what we're supposed to do, somebody else will. And if you're a part of a congregation where if the brothers aren't leading, the sisters will lead. Amen. Now, they do that because they have to, because we don't do what we're supposed to do. I hope that we will find motivation to understand God has privileged us by giving us the opportunity to lead, not only in the church house, but also in our own homes. And we ought not take that for granted. So when you think about godly men, list somebody on your paper who you think is a godly man. You interact with a whole lot of brothers in the congregation, and you've been influenced by many brothers. Just list a name or two of just a brother who you feel is godly. I'll give you about 20 seconds to do that. All of us are where we are because somebody invested in us. Be it your physical father or teachers or church members or people out in the community, we have all been impacted by somebody's life. And it's good every now and then to reflect back on that, to remember the inspiration that we received from someone, and then to recognize we can also provide the same kind of inspiration to somebody else. And we may be doing it right now, we don't even realize it. And then, okay, that's 20 seconds for that. Then I want to ask, why are you here this morning? What brought you here, besides the free breakfast? Why'd you come to this gathering today? What are you expecting to get out of it? So if I don't get some volunteers, I'm just going to trash you. So why are you here? All right. Encouragement. Encouragement. One of the things that we need as brothers is to be encouraged. Okay. Meet other Christian men. Many times, while brothers know a lot of people, we really don't have a whole lot of friends. We're very distant and guarded. Hear the word. Okay, yeah, we got to hear the word today. Now, when we hear the word, we have to be willing to allow the word to change us. Because too many times we just want to hear it. And we say, that was a good lesson, or that was a good sermon. And it stopped right there. It's not a good lesson, it's not a good sermon if it doesn't motivate us to change. Anybody else? Why are you here today? To increase your knowledge and make sure role of men in the church. Okay. One other person who wants to share. Okay, go play someplace new, different, meet some new people. And I hope before we all leave here today, we have interacted with at least one or two brothers that we didn't know. Not only interacted with, but you know their names. And you know the congregation they're from. And you know where they live. Right? Okay, if you guys haven't, you got an hour and a half to do that. So God created men to lead. I think we all recognize that. So the Genesis account, and you heard it all your life. Men, brothers are called to lead. But we have to also recognize that Satan has altered God's plan. And so when men don't do what God has called us to do, what God has gifted us to do, Satan will get in there and create alternatives. So think about that in our homes. And I know a lot of men claim to be leaders of the home, but your wife runs the house. That's reality. Men who are at the church house who have positions and titles, but who are just figureheads and flunkies. There's a difference between being a leader and just holding on to a position. And there are a lot of people who want to hold on to position. One, because they don't understand the role of a leader, and they don't even understand the responsibilities and the burdens that you have. And so I'm hoping before we finish, we can reflect back on that so that we will reclaim what Satan is trying to take from us. And recognize that even though there's some situations that may exist where women are doing good things and they're being helpful, that's not God's plan. That's Satan's plan. Leadership is learned. You're not born a leader. Somebody has to teach you, somebody has to train you, somebody has to stimulate you, somebody has to motivate you to want to take on the extra role or the extra burden. Think about it. In many of our congregations, it is a struggle to get brothers to do things. Why is that? We want to do what's easy and convenient. That's coming to church service on Sunday. Mm-hmm. But anything beyond that, I got to work. I'm tired. All these issues. Saturday is my only day to do my stuff, so I got to do that. So when is there time for the spiritual things? As a leader, you're called. You're a leader all week long. You're not just a leader when the church meets on Sunday and Wednesday. And too many times, men take on these roles and they think it only involves doing stuff when the church assembles. Much of leadership happens when the church doesn't even meet. It's happening during the week. It's the counseling, it's the Bible classes, it's the visitation. It's the being on the phone with somebody who calls you just when you can ready to sit down and eat. Okay, am I the only one who's had that? You just get ready to sit down to eat. Or you get ready to watch your favorite TV program. Or you think you're going to have some time just to relax. Or Monday is supposed to be your day off, but folks are calling and texting you. And these are legitimate needs, so you just can't ignore that. So we would do well to help aspiring individuals or brothers to learn consequences or the importance of leadership, which is why it's good we got some young people here, so that they're being shaped early on to determine if this is something that they want to take on. And really, those of us in leadership, we need to recognize we are role models for younger men to see that you can be a leader and still have fun. You can be a leader and still have your own personal life. You can be a leader and work 40, 50 hours a week. You just got to prioritize how you do it. Because if you don't prioritize how you do it, you'll always be complaining, I don't have enough time. I learned a long time ago, if you want to get something done, give it to somebody who's busy. Do not give it to somebody who's not doing anything. You know why? Because they still won't do it. A busy person, an involved person knows how to budget their time. They know how to prioritize. They know how to go to bed at night when they got to get up early the next day. Somebody who doesn't have those kind of responsibilities doesn't think anything about that. And then when it's time to do something, then they're making excuses. See, a leader doesn't make excuses. A leader just say, I forgot, or I just didn't do it. But they're not making excuses about it. Amen. Trying to cover up when you had 24 hours, or you had 7 days, or you had a month. Anybody ever saw somebody be given a project 3 or 4 months in advance? And the day the project is due, they're saying, oh, I didn't have enough time. 90 days? Do you have enough time in 90 days to do something? I've already said this. Many times in our congregation, we have the problems with our sisters that we have because they're always involved. They're always engaged. And they want to see the church advance. So they want to roll up their sleeves, volunteer, dig into their pocket to cover additional costs and things like that. And then us brothers, we're sitting around trying to debate and wonder. There are some decisions and some issues that go on in the congregation that need our attention. We can't just roll these things over week after week after week and never see the urgency or the need to get these things done. And so again, if brothers don't mobilize, we don't get involved, we don't hold up our end of responsibility, our sisters will say, we'll do it. Now, the problem with that is they may do it and they may do it well. It's just that they don't know then when to back off. Because once you start opening the door for them to run everything, they're going to keep running everything. One, because they're involved and they care. And they're seeing brothers over here that are not involved and are not really demonstrating that they care. Plus, I don't know about your congregation, but in our congregation, I'd say at least 70% of the people there are female. And that's a good thing, but you got to know how to manage your sisters. You got to know how to get them involved in meaningful things. So it has to be more than just take care of babies in the nursery, more than preparing the communion for Sunday. Well, we got women who are PhDs and CEOs in our congregation who run businesses. And then when it comes to the church building, we just want them to sit there and look at incompetent brothers. It makes it hard for them to not say, you know, I'll take care of this, I can do that. Again, we need to see that God has given us as brothers the privilege of leading. Every now and then I wonder, God, what would the church be like if you had reversed those roles and said women can lead? Anybody ever think like that beside me? Maybe God gave us the responsibility to lead is to get us out of our comfort zone. Because maybe he knew, not maybe, he knew if we didn't have some responsibility, if we weren't reminded to be engaged and involved, we just sit back. Like I noticed many of you, when we came in, everybody likes sitting back. Everybody likes sitting back. Amen. That's what you still on. So let's look at quickly 3 scriptures. 1 Timothy chapter 3, verses 4 and 5, and verse 12. Genesis chapter 2, verse number 15. 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse number 12. 1 Timothy chapter 3, verses 4 and 5 and 12. Genesis 2:15, 1 Timothy 4:12. So we'll get to the verses. I'm going to ask someone to read it out loud. So hopefully you got a Bible. If you didn't bring your Bible, you got it on your cell phone, or you got your iPad with it or something. So if you want to read, just raise your hand and read out loud so we can hear you. Genesis 2:14. What's this? Genesis chapter 2, verse 14.
15.
I'm sorry, Genesis 2:15. Okay, Genesis, first book of the Bible. Didn't read it. Okay, good.
The Lord God took the man, put him in the garden to work it and take care of it.
Okay, read it again.
The Lord God took the man, put him in the garden to work it and take care of it.
Okay, so what was man placed in the garden to do?
Work.
To work it, to tend it, to take care of. So man at the very beginning had an assignment. He had something that God gave him to do. And because this was prior the fall or prior the curse, it wasn't a burden. Work was fun. It was easy. So he had something to do. You need to recognize that when we get involved in work, we're helping to carry out God's plan. That's why a man needs to have a job and work. It is irresponsible for a man to be lounging around the house and his wife taking care of him. It is irresponsible for a man to be lounging around the house and his parents are taking care of him. So as we train our boys to become men, one of the things that we need to train them to do is to recognize there will be a time where you need to get a job. Because in working, we learn responsibility. We learn how to budget. It's very easy to spend somebody else's money. You guys know when you have sons, when they start making their own money, they still act like you're supposed to still buy stuff for them. But they got money that they're collecting, that they want to spend on foolishness. So if their parent says, okay, now that you got some income, we're backing off. And some of this stuff you've been wanting, since you got a paycheck coming in, and you're not paying no utilities, no heating bill, no mortgage, guess what? You're gonna pay for those things. Helps them with responsibility. You know why? How it helps him? Because he's gonna marry somebody's daughter. And if he hadn't learned how to work to support himself, how's he gonna work to support a wife? And then when children come along. If he has not learned how to care about other people, he's gonna end up being selfish. And selfishness in a marriage many times leads to divorce. So when we are involved in work, we're involved in God's plan. And God has a plan for each of us. So that's not on a working section, on a secular job, but also when it comes to work in the church. And this work is beyond the call to worship, the order of worship on Sunday. If you have a church property, there's stuff that needs to happen. The lawn needs to get cut every now and then. I hope that's not the preacher's job here. But in a lot of places, we hire a preacher. We think he's supposed to be the janitor, the lawn worker, and everything else. And then find time to prepare lessons to preach on Sunday. And the other brothers just show up and critique him and criticize him. And then when they get mad at him, want to fire him. Adam was a guardian. Not only that, he was also a steward. Stewards have to give an account for what they're doing. God placed him in the garden. God gave him responsibility. He was accountable to God. You and I are accountable to God. And so we just can't go out and do whatever we want to do, go out and say whatever we want to say. We're not give an account. And too many times we think, well, I'm big and I'm bad and I'm grown. Okay, that does not remove our responsibility to God because you're big and bad and grown. We fail to realize that Judgment Day is coming for all of us. And we're going to be judged, we're going to be evaluated on everything we've done and said. And so we need to start taking stock of our behavior right now so that we won't find a rude awakening come Judgment Day. I tell the people in Bedford Street, there are many folks that go to church services every Sunday in a church price building. They're going to die and go to hell. And so we just think because we come to a building that says Church of Christ, that's going to make everything okay. You got to live like a Christian. And that's something that happens Monday through Sunday, not just on Sunday. And so we have to help people to balance out this thing. Yes, there's some church activities that we want to do. There's a worship service, there's a Bible class, all the ministry activities. But you got to live as a Christian. So when you go home, you need to live out what we have been teaching and preaching at the building. I'm amazed at the number of homes where that's not done. And you see that when trouble comes and problems come. Now everybody's calling the preacher, can I meet for counseling? Or calling the elders, can we meet for counseling? And then many times when you meet with them, you discover they're struggling with things that we talked about in the sermon 2 weeks ago. And they were sitting in the audience. But we hear and we don't connect and we don't associate. And so we end up getting into trouble. First Timothy chapter 3, verses 4 and 5, and then verse 12. And in this passage, I know Paul is giving instructions to Timothy on qualifications for elders and deacons. But I need for us to understand, and I'm sure you already know that the qualifications that are listed here are the qualifications for any Christian man that's married. And so we want to make it be a super Christian. No, this is what any Christian man who's married ought to be. But because we're not all growing like we should, it becomes obvious that some brothers in our congregation are not as mature as they ought to be. That's not a knock against it, because we've all got to grow. And we all start at different places on our spiritual journey. But we need to be helping each other to grow spiritually. The challenge with that is many times when we find ourselves in positions of leadership, we fail to realize you need to still continue to grow. Just because you're the preacher does not mean you don't need to grow spiritually. Just because you're the elder does not mean you don't need to grow spiritually, or the deacon or the Bible school teacher. We get into these positions and we think we have arrived. I don't have to study like everybody else. When there's spiritual activity, it's not important that I be there. So I can be in my office while Bible class is going on. No, you need to grow. And we need to see you growing. Who has the passage? Okay, go ahead, read forward.
Manage his own family well and see that children obey him. Must do so in a manner worthy full of respect. If anyone does not know how to manage his own family, how can he take care of God's church?
Okay. So here's where many times we make our mistake in selecting leaders. And Paul here reminds us, our leadership is demonstrated by how we handle our families. So if you can't lead one woman and 2 or 3 children, how you gonna lead a church building for people? And we make the assumption he dresses nice when he comes to the building. Children are sitting on the pew with his wife and everything. And he's successful on the job, and we think that makes him a good leader. That's all external. You do not know the character or the quality of this man. You don't know that when they go home, his wife is the one who gets everybody organized. She's the one who lays down the law there. He just goes and sit in the easy chair and watch TV or read his newspaper. She's the one who buys his clothes and color coordinates for him. That's why he looks so together on Sunday when we see him. She's the one who's making the decision that has helped us to be sound and get our bills paid, not him. But if all you do is look on the external when it comes to building, you're not going to see this. So Paul says, look at what's going on in his house. Does his wife even respect him? Will his children listen to him? So if he tells them stop doing this, or he tells them to move, or whatever it is, look at it. No response. I think he says obey, under control. We have lost that based on the society we live in. Children don't obey their parents. Parents have let their children do whatever they want to do. And as long as they don't embarrass them or create an awkward situation, they leave it alone. Sending a child to their room today is no punishment. They got a TV, a laptop, and all these things, and a cell phone in there with no supervision. They want you to send them to their room. As husbands and as fathers, we need to rule our houses. That does not mean we're dictating. It doesn't mean dictator at all. But you ought to be the authority figure in your house. You're the leader. God has given you that role. And if you're married to a Christian woman, she wants that. And if you have Christian children, they will respect that. But with your children, you have to help them to understand that. That's why discipline is important. Because you have some hard-headed children who will try you just to see if you really mean what you say. And you got to love them enough to discipline them. Because if you don't discipline at home, the police will discipline them out in the street. A policeman is not going to argue with you when they say pull over and keep your hands on the steering wheel. He's not going to argue with you. You want to fuss at him and whatnot, he just arrests you. So there are some things that we need to learn at home that will help us. You have children who go off on teachers in the school district. Yep. If there's respect for authority, you're not going to disrespect the teacher or the principal because your parents have taught you not to do that. And if you do it, then when you get home, your parents are going to have something for you. So you old school parents, you know what that is. New school folk don't know nothing about that. You want to talk to them. Again, children should be under his authority. They ought to respect daddy. That doesn't mean they like the rules or what daddy's saying all the time, but they respect daddy because they know daddy loves them. And daddy only wants the best for them. Just like our wives submit to us, not because they agree with everything we say, but they know we love them. And we're willing to do whatever it is we can to be a blessing to them. So who wouldn't want to submit to somebody who's taking care of you? Mm-hmm. That's why we submit to Jesus. And so again, if a man cannot lead a wife and a few children, how can he lead the church? If a husband can't deal with his wife getting upset with him every now and then, how is he going to deal with all the sisters who get upset with you at the church building? And they will get upset with you. And it doesn't mean you did anything wrong. You just made a decision they don't like. You can't cow down every time somebody gets upset with a decision. That's one of the burdens of leadership. Everybody's not going to like or agree with everything you say, but you make sure to the best of your ability is consistent with the will of God. It is consistent with the word of God. And you have prayed over this thing before you do anything about it. But if you want to get general consensus on every decision, it's not going to happen. And so a leader, you have to learn that there are going to be times where I'm going to have to make some decisions that my family may not agree with. If I'm a church leader that the church family may not agree with. That's why you got to stay close to God. On a typical Sunday morning, when it's time to go and worship service Bible class, it is a struggle. If you live in a house with other folk, to get everybody ready on time. Am I the only one who's experienced this? Folk know it's Sunday. You know what we do every Sunday. But you're going to have one or two that's going to wait till the last moment. They know what time we need to pull out the driveway and get there on time. They're just going to try you. So it may be you say, okay, next week, you guys, we're going to get your clothes together on Saturday night. So we're going to stop this trying to find out what you're going to wear on Sunday morning. Okay, you do that. That didn't work. Okay, next time you say, okay, I'm waking everybody up at 6 o'clock on Sunday morning. But you as a leader got to find a way so we can get out of this house, so we can get to where we need to be on time. Instead of settling for, well, my wife, she's just going to be this way. Or the children, no. But where's your leadership? Because if you let them keep doing that, that's exactly what they're going to do. You're a leader. You showing up every Sunday late, and you don't think somebody notices that? Because you're going to get up and make the announcements or whatever at a certain time, and you're going to be talking about all the people who showed up late. But you forgot you showed up late. It's just that the whole church was not there when you got there late. It's called hypocrisy. If you can't lead his family, He's gonna have problems leading the church. And I'm sure some of you have seen brothers who fit into this category. They want to come here, they want to make all kinds of decisions, but he can't even get his wife to agree with him or follow him. And his children just haywire, going haywire. So if he's going to lead his family, he must be an example. Again, in the home is where we demonstrate our real leadership ability. If his wife won't submit to him, there's a problem. Now, it's not a problem that can't be overcome, but it's a problem that he's going to have to deal with. If his children won't obey him, that's a problem. But again, these are problems or challenges that can be corrected and dealt with. This is where we get to see what his leadership ability, his ability to influence people. Because if you're a leader at home, at church, you ought to have influence over people. So that even if they don't like what you're saying, because you said it, they'll do it. But you got to earn that. If we cannot resolve conflict or problems in our homes, how are we going to be able to do that at a church building of 50 or 60 people? Really think about that. If it takes you a month to resolve issues at home, and really they don't get resolved, and just say, we just agree to move on from it. You can't do that at church house. You know why? Because conflict here affects our ability to worship God. And we can ignore it and don't want to deal with it, but we're going to have problems worshiping God. We can go through the items of worship. And too many times we get comfortable just going through the items of worship, but we don't recognize in order to worship God, we got to be right with each other. So that means there's a conflict going on. We got to resolve that thing. So that when we come up in here to try to worship him, we are in one accord with each other. And too many times that does not happen. If you can't lead his children to Jesus, going back to the home, if he can't evangelize his own children, how's he going to help evangelize children of the church house? And I know we have a lot of leaders who have children that are not Christians. That puzzles me. That why are we selecting this guy as a leader? And one of the main things we need to be doing as a congregation is leading people to Jesus. You got folk that grew up in your house. That you paid for every piece of food they ate. You put all the clothes on their back that they had. And they're not Christians. And you're trying to lead us at the building. It's a problem, but many times we don't think of it as a problem, but it hurts you down the line. Because this person has to be able to give us some guidance and direction on what we ought to be doing. And so if he's not meeting the standard, what's to motivate the rest of us to try to meet the standard? 1 Timothy 4:12. Need to read. 1 Timothy chapter 4 and verse 12. 1 Timothy chapter 4 and the verse 12. 1 Timothy chapter 4 and verse 12. Need to read.
Let no one despise your gift, but be an example to the believers in word, in conduct, in love, in faith, in spirit, in faith, in good.
Okay, so here's another passage where Paul is writing to Timothy and simply reminding Timothy really about conduct and about influence that he, as a minister, as a preacher, needs to be aware of. Because too many times we don't recognize the power or the influence we have in the positions that we're in. And we don't recognize there's certain things that we can tell people, but we end up telling people a whole lot by how we live in front of them. And so if we get caught up on always teaching and preaching from the pulpit or wherever, okay, some lessons people need to see in your life. Because that sticks with it. We've heard people say a whole bunch of stuff, and they weren't true to what they said. But when we see it in his life, it connects with us. So we earn respect by being a godly example. And recognize 8 people who don't like you who respect you for your example. One of the things that we learned about Timothy is Timothy had the benefit of being mentored by Paul. We're losing an understanding of the importance of mentoring younger people. We just think people are going to get it on their own. No, some of us need to have a relationship with somebody who's older, who can periodically sit down with us and talk with us, who can share from their life experiences to us, so that we begin to see it's possible to do all these things. That you don't have to be perfect, because none of us are perfect. None of us are sinless. And when you don't get to know people on a personal level, you think that's something special about him. No, he's a Christian who's empowered by the Holy Spirit, just like you are. He has simply learned how to discipline himself to do what God has called him, commanded him to do. It's about discipline. It's about learning these things that we need to do and making a commitment to do your best to try to do them. And what you'll discover is as you try to do them, you start getting better. But if you never try, you'll always be saying, I know I need to do better. I know I need to do better. Well, if you know you need to do better, why aren't you doing better? And so Paul gives Timothy several areas where he needs to be an example. And I give the example as a model, there's a pattern, so that people can see. Because again, people need to see that it's possible to do these things. He said, be an example in how you talk, your speech. We need to learn that there's power in words. We need to also learn there are consequences for the words that you use, the speech that you use. There's certain ungodly stuff that will not come out of our mouths. I don't care how mad we are. Our words are to be seasoned with grace. Our conduct, that's our behavior, that's how we live our lives. We say we're Christians, we ought to live and act like Christians. Yes, we all slip up, we all mess up, but our goal, our ambition should be to live as a Christian. And the kind of love he's talking about here is not saying I love you. Valentine's love. We're all good at that, getting a card, giving some flowers, some candy to our wife around Valentine's Day. But the kind of love that makes an impact on people is self-sacrifice. Us doing things to help people with no expectation that they're going to do anything back for us. That's part of the problem with Christmas. We give people gifts, expecting them to give us a gift back. When they don't give us a gift back, our feelings are hurt. Well, there's no love in that. If that's what you want, keep your stuff. Spirit. We need to be some of the most enthusiastic people in the world. You ought to be excited about coming to worship service. You ought to be excited about Bible study. You guys who are part of the water congregations, you guys hosted this, you should have been excited about this men's breakfast today. And you should have told everybody that you know who's a Christian, we having breakfast. That's how we get the word out. That's how we get people enthused, where it starts with us. And not the way, just another Saturday morning, if you feel like coming, we've been building from 9:30 to noon. Okay, who's gonna come based on that? People like to sleep late on Saturday. So you're gonna have to come with some enthusiasm. You're gonna get people to turn the bed loose, especially on a cold day. On a rainy day, and you gotta drive over an hour to get there. Faith. Commitment. Brothers, we need to see more commitment. I'm quite sure there are some people who probably said they were coming today who haven't shown up yet. But that's always going to be the case. We don't go into despair over it, because we go with the brothers that God sent us. But you begin to recognize there are many people who will say they're going to do some things, make all kinds of plans verbally, but who never produce. Now, at a certain point, you need to recognize this brother has no commitment here. I know what he said, but he's not committed. I remind people at Bedford, Real commitment to Sunday worship comes in the wintertime. Because in a few Sundays, it's gonna start snowing. Or it's gonna start snowing on Saturday night. And you have to get up early Sunday morning and dig your driveway out. Now, you're gonna call around and say, well, I think, are they gonna cancel church services today? They don't do that here, right? In Massachusetts, folks will do that. So what we've said is, if church services will be canceled, we will contact you. Do not be calling us to find out. If you don't get a message saying it was canceled, you assume we meet. And you get up and dig out your driveway and come on. That's commitment. Instead of looking for an excuse. It's cold, it's snow. We know that. This is New England. I come here from Texas. So it was a big adjustment for me to get used to digging out the driveway on Sunday morning to come to church services. But you know what? I'm committed to God. And so if we meet for worship, I'm gonna try my best to get there. Now, if the freeway is shut down, I can't get there. But I'm not gonna be banking on the freeway being shut down or the electricity going out. I'm gonna prepare as if I am going there. If I can, I can. And I trust the leaders there that if the weather conditions are so bad, no one can get there, then service will be canceled. But guess what? COVID has come along, we got streaming. Now, let me just say this in case some of you are streaming at your service, at your congregation. Don't be streaming laying down in bed. Don't be streaming in your pajamas. Don't be streaming eating breakfast. Don't be streaming and you're multitasking on a whole bunch of other things that you really aren't paying attention to what's going on the stream. See, that's the downside to the streaming stuff. You guys know when you watch regular TV programs, you know a whole lot of stuff while that TV program is on. You're not always paying attention. But if we're not careful, we'll start acting the same way with the streaming service or the worship service. We'll be doing other kinds of things. It's on, so we can legalistically say, yeah, I watched the service. But did you sing along with us? When the scriptures were read, did you open up your Bible right along with us? When the brother was praying, did you bow your head and pray along with him like you would if you're in the building? When it's time for the offering, did you mail in your offering or send it through online or take it by the building, whatever it's supposed to be? Did you think about that? And then when it comes time to communion, did you already prepare for that? The question is to ask yourself, what kind of leader am I? And that's something you can ask yourself. What kind of leader are you? Whether it's at home, whether it's at a church building, or whether it's out in the community. And we're all in the community doing various things, or on your job for that matter. But what kind of leader are you? Are you someone who's a passive leader? You lead only when you have to, or when nobody else will? Who do you lead? Because if you're not leading anybody, you're not leading. And a lot of people claim to be leaders, but you look around, nobody following you. Not even your family. And then when it comes to the church house, are you available? Are you available? There are many people who want to do things on Sunday, but we can't have every meeting on Sunday. Because when you start putting so many meetings on Sunday, it takes away from this is the day we gather to worship and fellowship. And when we get focused too much on these meetings, and those meetings can be so bad that it messes up the worship experience. And very important question is, how do other people see you? Because we're good at evaluating ourselves the way we think we are. But every now and then we ought to ask other people, how do you see me? How do you see me? Do you see me as a leader? Do you see me as somebody who's on top of things I need to be on top of? How do you see me? Now, when you ask people that, tighten your belt. Don't get an attitude, because they're simply going to tell you what they see. Now, when they tell you what they see, you need to take a deep breath and recognize this is coming from somebody who's observing me. I am not observing myself. So when they give you that information, you now need to have some quiet time and just sort of reflect. The reality is, most times people are dead on when they tell us about ourselves. That's what we are, that's what we say, that's what we do. And then a couple of quick lessons for today. Kingdom greatness starts with humility. So if we're going to be a leader, there has to be some humility. You got to be able to consider other people. So yeah, as I said, for leaders are not dictators. So you got to be concerned about other people's feelings and thoughts like that. You got to be willing to compromise with people. There are some standards that you can't compromise on. But when we're in these areas where there's a leeway, you have to be considerate of people. Leadership starts with servanthood. Are you willing to serve people? Or do you always want people to serve you? Leaders continue to grow. They're investing in their ability to lead people. That's why they're reading and going to seminars or workshops or even fellowship activities like that, where you can continue to grow. So one of the reasons I was excited about coming, and I was coming even before, when I first saw the notice that was sent out, I was going to come just so I can get to know other brothers from other congregations. I'm in Massachusetts. I want to find out what the church is like in Rhode Island. So I'm getting a small taste of that now. And it's going to continue to grow as I interact with Wilson, as I interact with Tim and other leaders in this area. Because you guys are my brothers. I want to grow. I want to grow in fellowship, but I also want to grow in my knowledge and understanding of how to lead people. Leaders need to interact with other leaders. So you can learn some things from their setting and their situations. You remember what Paul did with Timothy? He did the same thing with Titus. What is it, Romans chapter 16? When you look at all those folks that Paul worked with and mentored with, we're in this thing together. And we need to recognize we can learn from each other. And then leaders are vulnerable. You gotta be real when you lead people. Stop acting like you're perfect. Stop acting like you got everything going on. Act like you never made a mistake. Be able to share from your experiences to help other people who are coming along after you. So we're dealing with a young man who wants to get married. Tell me what it was like when you were dating your wife. And tell me the truth, she didn't like you at first, but she came to love you. Now come on, some of us, we're married to women who when they first met us, they did not like us. And you have to use all your tools of persuasion. But obviously it worked, she married you. So help them understand she may be playing hard to get right now, but you keep on being generous and whatnot, you can win over. Talk to a brother who is going through some rough patch on his job. You know, he's about to be laid off and whatnot. Help him understand the world doesn't come to an end just because you're about to get laid off. You'll find another job, and if it takes you a longer period of time what you're anticipating, you got a church family that's going to help you. And we'll even help you pay your bills. That's what we need. You got to be vulnerable. You got to let them know that I have not always been the person that I am now. So the men who are leaders in our congregation, they didn't grow up in the church of Christ. They're street thugs. And God, through the caring of some member, introduced them to the church. They obeyed the gospel. And look at what God has done through transforming their hearts. That's all I have. Any questions? If not, while we take the break, we can dialogue.
Yes, I got a question about leaders.
Oh, right. Well, technically, yeah, we're born. We gotta be born. Yeah. But we're not necessarily born with these abilities. You gotta learn it. And you gotta be taught it. And so that's why when you see a young man who has potential early on, grab him. Get him involved. Well, Acts chapter 16, Paul saw Timothy and said, this is somebody who's good to be put in the ministry. We need to grab some guys like their age and start mentoring them now, so that by the time they're in the early 20s, maybe they want to become a preacher. And now that we got a preaching school, which is a prelude to what you're gonna say, now we got a preaching school just down the street. Okay, we can help him get the training that he needs in order to be a minister of a congregation. But we got to recognize, as long as you are alive, leaders, we're growing, and we're learning. And we need to be interacting with people who can help us to be better. Any other question? Okay, I guess we'll take a break. I'll be down here if anybody wants to come down and talk to me about anything I said.
So we're gonna break for 10 minutes.